Well, we've been talking for enough, I think. I'd really love to hear questions from the audience, and please make them as tricky and challenging as possible for our panelists. We have some roving microphones, so don't be shy, please stick your hands up and fire away.
Yeah, well, for us, we get 1,000 downloads a week for the podcast. So, in terms of traffic, it's okay, I'd say. We've got 20,000 subscribers, so, potentially there's, it could be bigger. But I think it depends on, it's like everything with comms, right? It depends on the format that you're comfortable with. So I think podcasts are great, yeah. But it depends on you as an individual if you want to listen to podcasts.
It comes back to the content and the authenticity of the content as well. Not doing a podcast for the sake of the fact that everybody listens to podcasts, because there are so many out there. Even in this industry, there are so many. And so it comes back to having something, find a niche, something that's genuinely interesting to your specific audience. And then it comes back to this piece on visibility. If you're promoting a podcast, it's not enough to just promote your podcast. You have to be, visible everywhere as a brand. And it's this kind of self-fulfilling cycle.
Mary, you had a point.
I was going to say, just in addition to that, podcast in the traditional sense that we think about of Mark and I are going to sit together and take a look at a topic that we read about or heard about, again, gaining expression. You would recognize our faces, you might tune in. Another idea to play around and pulling in AI as well is to take a look at, from a client perspective, a company perspective, is to take a look at what type of content do we have on one topic that is trending, because I've talked with my industry peers about it, and how do I make an AI generated podcast? And I could take 1,000 pieces of content that's either my own or online, and I could create bots that are people, and I could have that podcast ready and available probably within seconds. So that also is a very interesting concept, because we'll start to see a lot of changes in that podcast space as well. That will come back to authenticity, and again, is the AI world correct? Do we let it loose? Do we trust whatever's out there? But with working with your own content, that should be a pretty simple project. Again, that comes back to what I mentioned on repurposing content as well, and keeping people plugged in and those channels active.
Reece, do you want to take?
Yeah, I'll take the point on, my view is, right now I don't think it's there. And I've played around with it. We've done some stuff for clients, and you can tell the difference. My challenge back to you would be, one thing that you have that the AI doesn't have is a soul, right? I'm assuming. Yes. Not going to speak for myself. You have a different level of ability to interpret information and to craft that into a narrative. Even on a technical level, I have seen stuff, and I'm sure we've all seen it, where you go and you look at the content and you just think, that is a load of crap. Yeah. It is cast iron crap, right? You look at something and you look at the reasoning that the large language model has done, and it's hallucinated data, it's hallucinated links. You click on the links and they go nowhere. It's hallucinated news. I think that is a big challenge. So I look at it the other way around. I think that there is a huge role for us to play in maintaining, being vanguards, maintaining the credibility of the information that's out there against this profusion of stuff that's being generated by AI. I don't think right now, for longer form stuff that requires genuine insight, anything can replicate humans sitting down, talking to each other, that sort of direction-led creativity that I talked about earlier, and finding the sources yourself. Yet, let's do this panel again in 2 years, and then see where we are.
We get there. I think just to add, if you're interested in this area, there's a really, in Tom Whipple of the Times, he's explored this and the dangers of AI and generated content. He has, and there's a really interesting string of commentary on it on his ex-Twitter feed. But essentially, AI is creating and making up quotes in the manner that you've searched for. So if you're asking to verify or validate a quote, it'll give you the answer that it thinks you want to hear. And it's creating absolute nonsense. It's very dangerous.
I think what worries me even more about that is we talked about the 51% of the internet being bots. If the bots think it's real, then the bots think it's real. And if another bot thought that it was real at some point, then maybe it's real now. Yeah. So what even is real?
Yeah.
For me right now, there is no replication of actually sitting and talking to somebody and getting their insights and putting that through the content.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Rory, I think it's when you talk about communications and Mark, you gave a thin example. I know this doesn't fit everything, but when you're looking at looking for a quote, sure, use AI, but you need to measure the risk. And we're talking about the shipping industry. When you're talking about designing a vessel and equipping a vessel and the safety involved and the crew on board, are you going to, chat with a chatbot and make a decision about what type of ventilation system do I need? I don't think we're to the point today where we're talking about is AI going to move in and start to take over some comms and marketing activities. But now your question is leading into actually sales. Are we going to replace salespeople and sales and consultations and meetings with AI or answers that you can find online, hallucinations that are presented as fact because it's presented by a bot? I pulled it to the extreme, but I think, yes, it will come, but it's certainly not a replacement, I would say, yet.
Logically, I would think yes. And I've got no data to back that up, apart from go and look at my specialty, ironically. Maybe I should ask an AI, right? But I think look at the amount of events there are at London Shipping Week this year, more than ever before. Stuff that 3 months ago, I'm sure all of us were trying to get into, and you just couldn't because people want that. I think there is a huge role for the in-person event. I think you can get so much unique insight that you can trust because I've actually said it, not an AI facsimile of a managing director or whatever. I do think so, but that's based on intuition.
It's one thing to want to ignore it, but you can't really, it's going to get to a place where you can't really ignore it because it's completely, that's how it works online now. And, if you're saying you're skipping the AI results to look for the trusted content, is that more trusted? Because that will have been engineered to be in the top position through SEO, through, optimizing with keywords and backlinks. So actually, it's almost the opposite. AI is actually, these AI snippets could actually be more trustworthy because it's based on credibility from all of these different sources. I would say it's definitely younger audiences that are picking up, who are not going to Google anymore. They're going to ChatGPT to find the answers, even based on, I've got this in my fridge, what can I cook for dinner? They'll use ChatGPT to do that.
It's a really important point you make, though, because actually it's vital for companies to have rules of engagement around AI. And if you don't, we'd urge you to, because intuitively young people are using it as a tool. And the conversation we've just had about authenticity and veracity of the information is sometimes lost on them. And it's so important. And actually, particularly from an agency side, we can't have people putting clients' information out on the web or on these tools. And so we have very clear rules in place now about how we engage them. But yes, we use AI for workflow, efficiencies. We use AI for in the creative team. They have some fantastic AI tools that are incredible. But again, there's a point I wanted to make earlier is, using these AI tools for creating videos and ads is all very well, but good design is timeless and anyone can use these tools. And it's kind of dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And if you're not a trained designer, for example. So again, these are kind of incredibly sophisticated tools in the hands of people that are only just beginning to understand kind of prompt engineering and all of these things that we'll be learning about and kind of fluent in the future. You see, I'm nodding sagely. I'm going to defer to Katie on this one.
Yeah, so the way that we are working with clients for, improving their visibility in search engines is completely changing. We used to do a lot of keyword research to ensure that content is touching on trending topics and formatting it in a way that we know that search engines work, ensuring there's backlinks to make sure that, the website has authority. All of that still stands for organic results. However, as we've talked about, AI is completely changing that. And so now we are shifting how we are helping clients to be visible in search engines through optimizing content for AI summaries, but then also it's the added element of building those that web of credibility through other channels, and so that looks like looking at how many times the brand has been mentioned in AI overviews on Google, but then also on the other platforms as well as AI chatbots, and what are the things that people are asking. And it comes back to understanding your audiences. What are they actually asking? What platforms are they using? And tailoring your content to suit that, making sure that it's more conversational, question-based content, because that's how people are using search engines now. They're asking questions because they know they're going to get an answer from somewhere. And so we need to be structuring content in a way that is already predicting what people are going to ask and answer that in your content.
Just a quick addition to that too. I think what this is really doing in the Marcom space as well is that what we're going to start to see is really kind of these blurred lines between roles, because with the quickness that you need to respond to this, and as Katie laid out, it's really becoming a blend of a digital marketing strategy, social media management, and PR all in one. So it's not to say all of a sudden you need one person, but it becomes the blurriness between these roles and the mandates of how we typically describe those functions is now changing because of this as well. So it's quite an interesting topic.
Who wants to take that?
Well, I hope not. I hope not, because I think this is a brilliant career path, right, for many. I think it's probably realistic to think that might be the case. But again, speaking purely about technology where we are right now, what these large language models do is they predict the word that they think should come next, right? So if I said, let's do an experiment. If I said, finish the sentence for me, the first word that comes to mind, the dog jumped over the whatever, moon, fence, shed, right? That you're doing what an LLM is doing, right? I think that the realpolitik might be true, that the junior, maybe there isn't such a role for them, but I think there is, because I think you still need to train humans, and we need to be bringing in a generation of humans that can be custodians of these tools, that can corral these tools, and that can apply them to meet a business's objectives. Yeah. So, yes, keep hiring marketing juniors, and every university course leader has just breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, you were there.
No, I think we need to think of AI as a tool in the toolbox, and it is very much. Katie mentioned it. It's what should be shining through from the client perspective, which I'm here to bring is AI can probably write you a marketing strategy, but you need to look at the business objectives. What are you looking to achieve? And that might not be making X amount of dollars per year. It might actually be that you want to gain your LinkedIn following by 10% for a specific segment, or see that these 3 top decision makers are following and engaging with my social media page. So defining what your goals are and targets, and if it's for that month or if it's for the year, and actually carrying those conversations on with senior leadership. AI is not going to do that. Again, a framework marketing strategy that I could just as well go Google. I can find something online, sure, but it won't have that human component. It won't have the drive and the energy and the bubbling spirit that I'll bring your marketing strategy, right? So it's so unhuman that I think it becomes a tool, and it will be a tool that we use, and it can be a more predominant tool after time. And in some areas we won't use it. So I think AI is really a bubbling topic, and it's very cool, and it's enabling a lot, but we just don't know how much it will take on or how much we actually choose to use it. And I think that's what I'd like you to leave with, is how much do we want to involve and utilize AI, because it's still a choice at this point.
You can't avoid it. You need to be embracing these tools, and so juniors need to be trained in how to use them properly, and prompt engineering and how can they leverage AI to actually support their efforts in supporting the business. So I think training will be a big factor in the younger generation of marketeers.
If you know something to be true empirically, based on your experience, and every large language model out there is getting it wrong, I think you have a duty to try and get that truth out there and to move the dial, to actually change the way that something is being seen about and discussed. And Katie is far better placed to talk about sort of the specifics of being able to target that in a region. But yeah, from a philosophical perspective, if your experts know something and it can actually have an impact on your customers, your counterparties, it needs to be the central pillar of your communication strategy, right? For that region, or for that segment, for that stakeholder group.
Exactly.
And then practically, I mean, you there's a lot you can do in terms of getting a message in front of the 5 people that need to see it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it comes back to understanding the audience, how the content needs to take shape to resonate with them, and then getting it in front of them in a way that actually, gets them to be engaged and read it and respond to it. I do think that that's where paid media plays a big role. We haven't actually talked about paid media very much, but targeting is so sophisticated now, particularly on platforms like LinkedIn, where you can target people based on job title, employer, location, skills. And if you do have a really niche audience that you need to communicate and educate something very specific to, then that's the perfect platform, because you can target that small pool of people, test different formats, whether that is video content that's kind of educational, whether it is an animation, and you can publish that so that they can see it within their news feeds, and then you can look at that data and take that away in terms of refining your strategy moving forward. So we know that this region really responded to being educated via an animation, whereas this region responded better to a longer form written article, and then you can take that information and develop your marketing strategy off that basis.
I think just very quickly, the key takeaways for me is clearly we've got to adapt to these new formats and audiences. I think one important point was raised, I think Reece raised it around, which maybe was a little bit, we skimmed over, but amongst all of this noise, it's vital that we remember that, what change are we trying to affect as a result of our communication? Because if we're not clear on that, it's just adding to the noise. And it seems like we're competing for airspace just for the purpose of competing for airspace. And it goes back to that 101 about comms is, only communicate if you want people to think, feel, or do something differently. The rest is wasted. I think clearly the point you made around collaboration across agencies, clients, media, I think is ever more important. Really interesting review of the digital tools, the risks and opportunities available. And I think the biggest takeaway, hopefully, that's landed across the whole conversation was around authenticity being key, and authentic voices.